So let's talk about qualitative methodology. So there are a number of different ways that researchers can collect data. You have already done some work with the survey, which is a quantitative method. You give people a survey, you have them check the box, circle a number, what have you. So you're forcing people to answer a certain way, which is fine. Research can be done that way. But what we're going to talk about in this section is qualitative methodology, like interviews, like case studies, things like experiments, surveys. Those are quantitative. And first, on the next slide, do a little comparison of quantitative versus qualitative methods. But the bulk of these slides will talk about what quantitative methodology is and some of the characteristics, the strengths. I'll be the first to say that even though I'm a quantitative researcher, I like doing surveys and analyzing data statistically, that qualitative methodology results in the best work, but it is very time consuming. So you can collect data a number of ways. The assignment associated with this chapter, the interview assignment, is a qualitative way of collecting data. You're going to try and really get some depth to people's answers, not just have them circle a number or check a box. So self-report data. Self-report data, you ask people stuff and they tell you. Again, it could be like on your survey. You could also do things in an interview where you ask people and they tell you. So self-report data are where the people you're studying, they tell you, they report back to you on what it is you're asking them. Now, the most common way that sociologists collect data is through the survey. Good test question, but it's also just a very common truth in sociology. So make sure you understand that. The survey is a way that is the most common. I remember talking to a professor one time, and he told me that whenever he sends out surveys, he tries to have 3 or 4 different topics embedded within the survey. So that way he can get 3 or 4 papers out of it. So anyway, survey is a quantitative way to collect data, the most common way. Let's do a little bit of comparing and contrasting before we go on and talk about qualitative research. Let's do a bit of comparing and contrasting about the quantitative, the survey, the experiment, and the qualitative, the interview, the case study. So here we go. So quantitative on the left, qualitative on the right. Let's just go across and compare them. Deductive reasoning is a quantitative methodology, and inductive reasoning is a qualitative methodology. Now this GSSG stuff, okay, the G stands for the word general and the S stands for the word specific. So deductive reasoning is reasoning that begins with a general idea and ends up discussing a specific case or a specific idea. Conversely, inductive reasoning is reasoning that begins with a specific idea or case and then goes to general reasoning. So for example, if let's go down here, hypothesis testing. Okay, so let me jump down to 5. If you're testing an hypothesis, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, here's a theory I want to look at. I'm going to see if it's true. So for example, research, a theory has argued that a lot of delinquency is companionate, meaning you do a lot of delinquency when you're out with other people, not when you're alone. Yes, delinquency happens when you're alone, but a lot of delinquency, especially among teenagers, is companionate with others, with peers, with friends. So that's a theory that delinquency is in large part related to your peer associations. There's a theory called differential association. If I want to see if that theory is correct, I can test the hypothesis that delinquency is largely companionate, or when you're out with peers. So if I'm testing an hypothesis, I'm starting with a general idea, a theory. The theory says a lot of delinquency is going to happen when you're out with others. That's a general idea. And then I'm going to study people and see if I can find out specifically for these 50 or 80 or 1,000 people you study, is what the theory says in general true for these specific cases. That's deductive reasoning, general to specific. Inductive reasoning starts with specific cases. You go out and you study people, and from the stuff you find from these 5, 10, 20, 30 people, you then try and generalize or develop a theory based on what you found. Deductive, inductive. Now, if you ever find that you have that proverbial brain freeze on an exam, well, one way that I try and remember which is which is, well, if you look at these 2 words here, this word comes alphabetically before this word, right? Deductive comes before inductive. Well, the word general comes alphabetically before the word specific. So the word of these two, the word that comes first alphabetically is deductive. And of these two words, general and specific, the word that comes first of those two is general. So G comes before S, D comes before I. That's just my simple way of trying to remember things. So if it helps, great. If not, let me know what questions you have about deductive versus inductive reasoning. In quantitative methods, you tend to be able to study lots of people, hundreds, thousands of people. In qualitative methods, it takes a lot longer, more time consuming. So qualitative research tends to involve smaller numbers, which it can be fine. For example, because you're studying smaller numbers of people, you can then get more depth, more information. So when I say more rich depth, what I'm trying to say here for number 3 on the right is that you get a lot of detail about the people you're studying. Over here on the left, you don't get as much depth. You can study more people, but you don't learn as much about them. So what's the trade-off? Study more people, but don't quite know as much about them, or study fewer people and learn more about them? Well, it's your call. Let's see, number 4, you do a lot of statistical testing, lots of stats, percentages, correlations, regressions and such. Over here, you focus on the trends. You look at the data you collect and you try and figure out what it is that you're seeing. So here I might run some correlations, look at percentages. Here I'm looking for patterns, for trends. I already mentioned hypothesis testing. Here you start with the theory and you want to study people and see if that theory is true. That's hypothesis testing. Over here, grounded theory is where the theory is grounded in your research. So when you do qualitative research, you're trying to develop theory. You're trying to find out why stuff happens. Over in quantitative, you're often trying to test an already existing theory. So over here, you start by studying, interviewing 5, 10, 20 people, and you ask them questions about whatever topic you're studying. And based on the trends, the patterns you see here, you try and then develop a theory that's grounded in a theory that's based upon your observations. Let's see next, nomothetic. In quantitative research, you want to generalize. That's nomothetic. In qualitative, you do idiographic research. You want to look for patterns in the specific individuals you study. Quantitative, you use closed-ended questions. Okay, you can use some open-ended, but mostly quantitative research involves closed-ended questions. You use open-ended questions in qualitative. You don't ever force people to answer a certain way. You just let them answer questions the way they see fit. You certainly may need to guide them here and there, but open-ended questions. And quantitative research is very precise, very precise. You might, for example, find that if you're testing drugs to help cancer, maybe one treatment works 49.4% of the time, another one works 49.8% of the time. Well, that 0.2% difference can be very, very statistically significant. And so the statistics over here are very, very precise, whereas over here you want to look at complex issues. You want to look at the details, the trends, the issues that people are talking about. So it takes a lot longer, a lot more time to do this research over here than it does over here. Each has its strengths, each has its weaknesses. So let's go ahead and pause there. And if you have any comments about any of this, questions, comments, please let me know.